so necessary. The healthy neocortex is so necessary to success and achievement. So what you need to know about how this brain develops, okay? So let's call this here the neocortex, right? Which has our, you know, the frontal brain is part of that, and all of those skills that I talked to you about are part of that. Know that the language of this brain is words. Okay? So we have our sensations mediated by the brainstem, our feelings mediated by the limbic brain or the midbrain, and words being mediated by the neocortex. Well, when the amygdala perceives that we are in danger, and it sends this message to the brainstem to be on, right, for this fight or flight response, it sends a message to the neocortex to shut down. And this is really important for us to understand, because too many of our children end up feeling, they go through very real events that sometimes we misunderstand, right, that can be scary and can leave their nervous system highly activated. And when that happens, when they stay in that activated place for too long, the amygdala actually fails to stop sending this message of fear to the brain. So when stress or anxiety or unresolved trauma, let's say, if those things go on too long, this amygdala stays on, and it continues to send this message of fear. It keeps the reptilian brain very active. It keeps children in this fight or flight response, in this high arousal state, and it shuts this part of the brain down that we so need for school functioning. And why would it do that? You know, I want you to think, has anyone ever had a gut feeling? Right? Yeah, we've all, it's a pretty common human experience. Well, a gut feeling is very sensory, okay? It is a sense that we get, right? We're sensing that something is wrong and that we shouldn't be here. And we might feel a pit in our stomach. We might maybe start to back up. We feel kind of tingly maybe in our legs, like, I need to get out of here, right? Well, when you're having that experience, what does your neocortex do, right? This is your rational part of your brain that reasons, that uses words. What do you think that part of your brain does? I'm sure you know, you've had a gut feeling. And what have you done in many cases when you've gotten that gut feeling? Act on it? I love to hear that. Most people say they don't act on it. They talk themselves out of it. Okay? So a lot of times, you know, we're wanting to get out of that parking lot and we say, oh, don't be so ridiculous. You're going to look so ridiculous running to your car. There's nobody in this parking lot. You're going to be perfectly fine, right? So we have this sense feeling, which happens very instinctively, very automatically, and it's sensory, right? We're sensing something in our body, but that neocortex interferes. So this is why, for our survival, our brain is, of course, very intelligently created, and it knows, right, to not just to turn this on, but to turn this off, because that, in fact, increases our chances of survival when the neocortex doesn't interfere. Okay, this will help you to understand how self-regulation, how that capacity, the healthy development of that capacity can go wrong, okay? So we'll talk more specifically about that. What I want you to know about brain development, okay? And we're just gonna come back to these issues. We know, as I said, that the brainstem is all you have at birth. So the brain actually develops in a hierarchical fashion. What does that mean? It means that first we only have the brainstem, and the healthy development of that is completely necessary for the healthy development of the limbic brain, and the healthy development of the limbic brain is necessary for the healthy development of the neocortex, which is what we need them to have for school functioning, right? So we have to make sure from 0 to 3, when all of this is developing, right? Most brain development is occurring after birth. Of course, there's a great deal. We're born with as many cells as we're ever going to have. But then what happens? After they're born, so much more brain development is occurring. And so what we do as far as nurturing and parenting and soothing and all of that in those first years becomes absolutely critical to the rest of the development of the brain and this capacity to self-regulate. All of our studies identifying all this neuroscientific research over the past almost 20 years that has led us to understand that self-regulation is what we really need to be solidifying in our children for learning and behavior to be possible. We also know that what interferes with that capacity are these kinds of events, right? Something unpredictable that comes out of the blue, right, that they can't really control, that we weren't able to control, that we weren't able to protect them from, okay? So unresolved trauma, in fact.
Are you talking something huge, like someone burglarizes your house? Or you're talking about something small,
well, let's talk.
That's insignificant to you and you didn't even realize it.
All of that. Yeah. All of that. So what are some other things that are seemingly benign but could actually be traumatic for our children? Do you have any guesses? Do you have any concerns?
Separation anxiety?
Yes, yes. So separation anxiety, that's a good one, because all of this, I'm glad you bring that up, because all of this, we always have to be thinking about what's in the normal life stream and what's outside of that. Because we're always we're gonna have separation anxiety, they're gonna have separation anxiety, right? It becomes a concern when it turns into a separation anxiety disorder because it's really out of the ordinary, right? The degree to which they're anxious is extraordinary. So, but there is a normal level of either one of us, right, parent or child, feeling anxious about a separation. So it's really about gauging how long are they upset after the separation. Usually if they can see mom or dad, they stay upset. If you get out of their view and you're gone, they usually calm down right away, right? They may take 20 minutes to calm down. It's normal for the sympathetic nervous system to need a good 20 minutes to come down sometimes. Now, that's not, you know, that would be unusual for it to take that long for most of our children after we're out of view. So usually they get distracted, they get excited that they're doing something else, and they're off and running, and it's fine. So were you speaking about your own separation anxiety?
Yeah. Because sometimes have a happy ending, right?
Yeah, of course.
Just checking.
Yeah, because sometimes it is about our own, where we get worried about them, and they're a lot of times doing a lot better than we are, right? So we always have to be gauging that. Okay, so some seemingly benign kinds of things. What do you think might be? Because of course, yeah.
Broken leg.
Yeah, depending on how it was broken, right? You know, that leads me into falls and injuries in general, falling off a bicycle, right? Any of those kinds of things. It doesn't, of course for many it's not going to be traumatic. Not everybody who experiences a trauma becomes traumatized. In fact, the majority of people do fine. We're living on planet trauma. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? So we can't turn on the news, you know, we can't get in our car and drive without recognizing that we're living on planet trauma. So most of us do fine, and our children do too. They overcome things because our bodies are natural healing mechanisms. We actually have everything inside of us that we need to heal from our experiences. So most do fine. But yes, some don't do so well in the face of even, you know, what seem like minor events. So when I think of that, when you bring up that example, I think of, you know, how that might happen, right? So they may have a fall. Is there anybody there with them when it happens? If they do actually break a limb, it's extremely painful. If no one is there and they don't have any resources available to them when they're going through this, a lot of times it can be very traumatic. Falling off a bicycle, sometimes our children become very disoriented and they don't know where they are and they don't know how to get help. Yes?
What about sleeping at night by yourself? Your children by themselves.
Right.
What did you say?
Sleeping at night by themselves.
Children sleeping at night by themselves. So again, it's like in that life stream, it's a normal developmental progression that they're going to have to learn to do that. And so there's some angst and some anxiety around it, right? It's normal for us to feel some stress and arousal and anxiety. So it's a matter of the degree right? So how upset are they? For how long are they upset? How long is this going on? So there is a normal developmental period when there's going to be some angst around it, and then if that doesn't dissipate and it continues, and sometimes it actually gets worse, then you would be concerned that something has triggered, you know, their inability to sleep on their own. And what is it that they're imagining is going on in the room, or has something ever gone on, or, right? You'd want to get to the root of why that is so difficult for them if it's out of the ordinary.
What about stuff like children who are afraid of dogs or afraid of insects or something like that?
Right. So there are going to be normal fears because they have imaginations, and they're imagining that the spider's going to crawl under their shirt and, you know, right?
Like, it blows my mind that my son will do whatever with any bug, but my daughter, if an ant crawls on her, will scream bloody murder.
Yeah.
And we treat them the same.
Right.
I'm like, how did this happen?
Right.
I don't remember any trauma, but
right. And
it's her perception. You know?
True. That really brings us to the definition of trauma, right? That it's any event that's real or perceived. So they may perceive a threat of danger. And see, the brain doesn't actually distinguish between whether or not it's a real danger or not. It just feels the fear, right? The amygdala feels this fear reaction and sends that message. So some people, some of our kids are vulnerable, are sensitive. And we know if you have more than one, you know, or you have, you know, nieces and nephews, and you notice there's always a sensitive child in a family, right? The more maybe perceptive one, and, you know, the one who's more susceptible to even minor kinds of things. And so that little nervous system just happens to be more vulnerable, right? Sometimes it's a result of temperament, which is genetically determined, or it can be whatever was going on in utero. Sometimes we're very different with our first pregnancies than we are with our second pregnancies, and we can see that difference a lot of times in their sensitivity levels, right? And their vulnerability levels.